This story was submitted by an anonymous viewer. I live in Skagit County, Washington. When I was about 17, I was dating a girl from school in Blaine, which is right on the US-Canadian border and about an hour north of where I lived. She grew up playing rugby her whole life, so naturally, when we started dating, I started going to games and playing a little as well. Her friend Rick and I hit it off immediately when I started playing. Rick was an animal. He was a 6'5", 245-pound Samoan. I watched him score with a guy hanging on his right leg, another one on his waist, while carrying a would-be tackler on his shoulders. We all went to this party in Bellingham following a pretty rough-fought game to celebrate our win. Everything was going great. It was one of the funnest nights we've had in a while, until Rick's ex showed up. She was mad seeing him dancing with other girls, and seeing that he was over their recent breakup. She came up and made everyone super awkward, trying to talk Rick into having her back and calling all the girls in our group sluts and skanks. Rick told her to leave, and she got mad and started hitting him and scratching him. Rick pushed her away, which, as you could imagine, even him barely pushing her sent her stumbling backwards given the fact that he was abnormally large and she was quite petite. After the situation calmed down, everyone went back to having a great time. 2 a.m. rolls around, and everyone is starting to leave. Rick starts to walk home since he lives just a few blocks away, and my girlfriend and I leave in my car so we can get back to my house for the weekend. The next morning, my girlfriend wakes me up bawling her eyes out. "Babe, what's wrong?" "Rick is dead," she cried. We immediately got back in the car and headed back to Bellingham to give statements to the police officers about the night before and find out what happened. Rick had been stabbed multiple times and shot in the chest with a shotgun. Then his body was hung from a tree. Apparently Rick had been followed home by 5 guys that his ex had called and told Rick that he had hit her, which was completely untrue, and they should have known considering she didn't have a single mark on her. If a Samoan hits you, you're not walking away from that without some kind of visible damage. The police told us that 3 of the 5 guys were also dead, and that they were currently looking for the remaining 2 suspects. One of our teammates' fathers was a sheriff, so we got a lot more details than what was released to the public. A few days later, they found the other 2 suspects hiding in the woods of Mount Baker. They both confessed and gave accounts of what happened. Rick was walking home when they confronted him. They attacked him, and in the middle of the fight, one of them pulled out a knife and stabbed Rick. Rick started fighting for his life at that point. Rick crushed one of the man's windpipes and suffocated him, and he curb-stomped the other guy, completely collapsing his skull and killing him. The 3rd attacker was killed by a broken neck. By that point, Rick had been stabbed 13 times all over his body. One of the attackers had managed to get to his truck and pull out a shotgun, shooting Rick in the chest and killing him. After they killed him, these racist pieces of shit hung his body from a tree, where he was found the next morning. Rick was a warrior, physically and spiritually. He would have never gone out of his way for a fight. He never resorted to violence unless there was absolutely no other choice. If those guys weren't so fucking ignorant and would have actually investigated what had happened, instead of trying to run to the rescue of some girl who they were all probably trying to fuck, with no actual knowledge of the true situation, Rick would still be alive. That girl committed suicide, and not to sound cold, but I have no sympathy for that witch. One of the guys that attacked him was killed in prison under questionable circumstances, and the other guy has an entire Samoan family patiently waiting for him to get out. If you didn't already know, Samoan families are super close. Don't fuck with them. Ever. I wanted to share this story because people need to realize that making shit up for attention, or because you were angry, can get people killed. Also, for the guys who think they are protecting a woman, don't jump to conclusions. Make sure that what that person is saying is actually true. To all the guys, there are women out there who will thrive off of playing the victim and manipulating you into doing what they want in guise of protecting them. To the ladies, there are guys that will do the same to you. If you are not directly involved in the situation, either stay out of it completely, report it to the police, or be damn sure that you know all the facts before getting involved. Rick was an amazing person. I learned a lot from the short time I knew him. His warrior spirit is not common in today's society full of skinny jeans and man buns. This story was submitted by Josephine. This happened to me about a month ago. I am a 19-year-old female living in Australia. I live in a nice neighborhood surrounded with public transport, shops, and schools. On this particular night, I was having trouble sleeping and decided to go for a walk. I go for these walks almost every night as I suffer from severe nightmares. It was about 1 a.m. when I left my house, and it was very dark. I headed towards the creek near my house, as this was the place I always walked. I was only wearing a long t-shirt a male friend had given me, and shorts that were hidden under the t-shirt. Now, you were probably thinking, why would you leave the house with so little on? It was a very hot night, and I'm about 99% of the time barefoot because I don't like the feeling of shoes against my feet. To get to the creek, I had to walk about 5 minutes out, climb over a small wooden fence, and walk down a hill to get to the trail. The creek is really long and goes around the entire park. Directly in front of me was the trail of rocks you could use to reach the other side of the creek, but that isn't what I did. I stepped right into the water and turned so I was facing the right. I looked around to make sure nobody was around, and then started to walk straight ahead. I walked about 1.5 meters, and then I stopped. By then the water was just above knee level, but this is because I am very short. If you were tall, you wouldn't be near as wet. Now I turned to the right again, so I am facing the hill that I just walked down, and just above the water level was this long underground tunnel. Nobody actually knows where this tunnel leads, or if there's even another way out, but this is always where I come to sit, so I crawled in a few inches and sat down, resting my back against the side of the tunnel walls. I was only in there for about 5 minutes when I started to hear whispers echo around me. I had been coming here for ages and have never heard or seen another person in the tunnel, so I automatically got freaked out. I went quiet, hoping to make out the whispering, and what I heard only increased my curiosity. They were whispering, "Help, help, help." It sounded like a man's voice. I got a little uncomfortable and wasn't sure what to do. Should I leave and go find help, or crawl further into the tunnel and investigate? I decided to crawl deeper into the tunnel. I chose this option because if it had been me stuck down there, I would want someone to come help me too. The deeper I went, the darker it got, and the colder I became. "Help, please," the whispers continued, so I just kept going deeper into the tunnel. Then suddenly, I heard the most blood-curdling scream ever, which made me freeze in absolute fear. I was now contemplating turning around and running for my life, but I couldn't. I couldn't leave whoever was down here. I waited a few moments and crawled a little bit further. I then came in contact with this big potato sack, but looking at it you could tell something was in there. I was confused as to why a sack would be this deep in the tunnel, so I just gave it a little shove, and it responded with a painful groan. Fuck! Someone is in there! Without thinking, I scrambled to open the top of the sack, and what greeted me still freaks me out to this day. It was the body of this young man. He looked to be in his early 20s, with beautiful long black hair, and was covered from head to toe in tattoos. His hands and feet were bound tightly, and his face was pale. I only then realized that my hands were now covered in blood. I looked from his face down to his stomach, and saw he had been cut right down the center of his stomach. I gagged, but prevented myself from throwing up. "I'm going to get you out of..." My sentence was replaced by a long scream when I saw this older man approaching us from the darkness he had been sitting in. He was old, very overweight, had a long beard, messy hair, and no shirt on. He grinned at me, and I saw he was missing half of his teeth. "You're very pretty, and I'm very lonely," he said, still looking directly at me. He leaned forward, grabbed my ankle, and started to pull me towards him. I screamed and kicked, trying to get him to release his grip. "Let go, you sick fuck!" I kicked him right in the groin and he let go, falling backwards in pain. I quickly scrambled back to my feet and went back to the man in the sack. "I'm going to get you out of here." I grabbed a hold of the sack, leaving him in it, and crawled as fast as I could, dragging the sack behind me. The moment we got to the entrance of the tunnel, I lifted him out of the sack and slowly set him on the grass, resting his head on my lap, pulling out my phone, and calling the police. The police had an ambulance arrive only moments later, and the man was lifted onto a stretcher and was taken to the hospital. I gave the police my statement, then took them to the tunnel where they found and arrested the man for a range of different offenses. Only a week later, I was walking down the same trail, and I heard a male voice call out to me, "Hey, wait!" I turned around, and you guessed it, the young boy I had saved was walking towards me. "I wanted to thank you for what you did for me last week. If you hadn't found me when you did, I don't think I would be here today. My name is James, by the way." He extended his hand to me, and I shook it, smiling. "It's no problem. I would have wanted someone to do the same for me. You were looking much better, and my name is Josephine." He asked if he could walk with me, and I agreed. We are now good friends, and we hang out every day. We found out we have a lot in common, and live close by to one another, so things worked out well for the both of us. My advice for people is, if you think someone is in trouble, follow your gut. If you don't want to do what I did and investigate by yourself, please call the police straight away, because you could save someone's life and prevent other innocent people from going through the same experiences. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check the description for information on how to submit your stories. So in the first story, I did as much research as I could to try and verify this, and from what I found, Mount Baker is a common hotspot for people hiding or murdering people. I can't personally verify this incident, but with the passion that this person wrote it in, I have a hard time believing that they would have made this up. My heart goes out to you and your friend, and I really appreciate you sharing his story. I hope you all had an awesome weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.